You're tuning into Black and White Sports on YouTube. The no-holds-barred truth on sports. The main event starts now.
All right, Black and White Sports supporters, we're going to talk about a quarterback that we have talked about a lot on this channel. We cover the Broncos. We were covering him long before Sean Payton showed up, and I'm talking about Russell Wilson. Now, as we know, not this past season, but the prior season, Russell Wilson's career looked like it might have been headed towards being over. All right, it was a total and complete dumpster fire over Nathaniel Hackett. They hire in Sean Payton there. Everybody knows Sean Payton's a bit of an offensive guru, and a lot of things happened. Russell Wilson did have a better season. However, Russell Wilson struggled to run that offense in the manner that Sean Payton wanted it run. So, as we know, between the contract and that aspect of not being able to run a timing and rhythm offense like Sean Payton would like, and if you watch the film, here's the thing, folks. It's not that Russell can't pull the ball down and take off and do all that sort of crap. That's just not what Sean Payton wants, all right? The problem was when Russell was taking the ball and running for 7 yards, it was like, oh, my God, he ran for 7 yards. But when you watch the film, you went, oh, wait a minute, you had a wide receiver wide-ass open at the 13 yards. So you gave up 6 yards for your run. And that's sort of indicative of what happened all season long and why so many people that don't pay attention was like, well, Russell's having a great year. Well, not really, because he left a lot of the offense out on the field, all right? That's the best way I can describe exactly what has happened. Russell was doing that with the Seahawks too, and it was driving Pete Carroll and John Schneider up a tree. Now, before people like to dog out Sean Payton, just keep in mind, this is the 2022 Broncos. They were 5-12. Well, Sean Payton comes in and you win 3 more games. A 3-game improvement is pretty impressive, no matter how you cut it. So that leads us into 2 more teams that we cover a lot. The Raiders and the Steelers. I just put a Steelers video out. Peter King at NBC Sports came out and crushed the Steelers and Mike Tomlin for not responsibly addressing the quarterback situation. There's been a lot of rumors. Russell Wilson is a major rumor to Pittsburgh. Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, these veteran guys. They're staring right down the gun of Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph again. The quarterback situation hasn't been addressed since Ben Roethlisberger retired. Although Mason Rudolph did flash, and one could argue he should get a shot. The problem is you're in a division competing against Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. Good luck, right? Hell, even Jake Browning outperformed any of the quarterbacks, and I understand he lost head-to-head, but Jake Browning showed over the course of about 8 games he could start in this league. So you get my point. The jury's still out on Mason. The Raiders, Aiden O'Connell, had a couple of good games, but I think most Raiders fans would be like, we don't know that this is the guy. Jimmy Garoppolo is on that roster. I think Jimmy G gets let go. By the way, I'm making a call now. I think Jimmy G's a starter somewhere next year. You might be like, what? Yeah, I think he ends up taking the job from somebody. I just don't know where, and I can't figure it out exactly where that's going to be. But I think you could see that happening. Nonetheless, this brings us to a lot of the fire that's burning in and around the Raiders and the Steelers and Russell Wilson. All right? Now, just so you'll have frame of reference, Russell Wilson, this is PFF. This is the quarterback grades for this year. He was ranked as the 18th best quarterback in the NFL. Now, if you ignore minimum snap count, which we can do, which will bring in other guys, frame of reference, Kenny Pickett, 25. All right? Aiden O'Connell, 28. Mason Rudolph tied for 28. along with Jimmy G, Aiden, Kyle Allen, Tim Boyd. How is this possible? This is sometimes when PFF's grading system makes me go, what the hell? What the hell? All right. I don't think there's a world in which I live where Mason Rudolph is not better than, let me just bring that back up, Kyle Allen, Tim Boyle, or even Tyler Huntley, even though I think Tyler Huntley's in a, Joshua Dobbs. I mean, I think Mason outdid all those guys. By the way, we were talking about Jake Browning. He was 16. Joe Burrow was 17. Just saying, all right? So let's get to this. The Raiders, and then we'll get to the Steelers. According to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, an anonymous NFC executive said the following about Russell Wilson possibly ending up with the Raiders. The Raiders need a vet, and they are one of Wilson's original teams. I remember he put out that list that he wanted to go to. He'd stay in the AFC West. He'd stay West Coast, kind of. And Wilson's wife, Ciara, can do a Las Vegas residency as a live performer. I had not considered that. And by the way, those singers get a boat ton of money. A boat ton of money from those big buildings they call casinos that make all the money. Okay, so that makes some sense. There's multiple avenues of income for Russell Wilson if he was to go to the Raiders. And now you got to pay attention. Who do they hire as offensive coordinator? That kind of thing. They're looking at all the guys that are rumored to the Raiders are rumored to the Steelers too, because they need an offensive coordinator. God, there's been a lot of change in head coach and coordinators across the league. It's wild. Fowler noted the Broncos are likely to move on from Wilson during the offseason after him sitting for the final 2 games of the 2023 season. So now we got the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. They're getting in on the Russell Wilson action too, all right? So all the creative things must be considered, including the idea of signing Russell Wilson. You do understand the gravity of the situation. Yes, you realize that Steelers quarterback situation qualifies as an emergency. Look, that could be a lot of teams. The pressure is starting to mount on Mike Tomlin to address this position, this quarterback position. That's just what I did that video on. I mean, Peter King crushed him over it. You can't compete in that division. You can't compete in the AFC. Look at this. Baltimore's going to camp. Lamar Jackson, Buffalo, Josh Allen, Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, Cincinnati, Joe Burrow, Houston, C.J. Stroud, Chargers, Justin Herbert, likely with Jim Harbaugh. Yikes. That AFC West is going to be tough. Miami, Tua Tagovailoa, Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence, even though I would be the first to tell you. And New England might be going with Drake May or Jaden Daniels. We don't know yet. All right? So this is about to ramp up right here. The idea of a Pickett-Rudolph competition, while compelling in some ways, would be a reason for fear, not optimism. And we call to mind one of the football's finest cliches, courtesy of the late, great John Madden. John Madden's been mentioned on this channel twice today. Quote, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you actually have none. It was a really good quote. Tomlin was asked several questions about his quarterback situation at his season-ending news conference. And if there ever was a time to walk off the podium, that was it, because there were no good answers. Wow, he's getting crushed everywhere. Everywhere. Actually, there's never a competition in this thing. If you have a guy and you went to camp with a guy, an anointed one, for your first 15 years. His name was Ben Roethlisberger. Competition is the last thing you want at the quarterback spot. But this is where the Steelers are, backed into the corner with Pickett, headed into year 3, needing to find out if he can assert himself and hoping that Mason Rudolph will provide, quote, competition, but uncertain if he will return. See, that's the thing. Mason may walk in all this. And if I was him, I might actually consider it. It's a strange situation because the Steelers want to find out once and for all about Pickett. That's the plan. As such, it would preclude the idea of adding a surefire starter as Kirk Cousins. But what about Wilson, who is expected to be released? His situation is much murkier. What if there's little market for him? Would he consider a backup spot with a quick promotion possible? Tomlin has already shown he's willing to bench and berry pick it. Quote, Peter King said this, quote, I would not rule out Wilson there. Russell, I think if Mike Tomlin had his way, he'd want a veteran quarterback in there who can make sure that you either enter the season with a fighting chance against 3 teams in your division, all of whom have a better quarterback situation right now than you do. I did tend to argue against that because I'm not sure that the Browns situation is all that good. The upside here is that Wilson, 35, is coming off a season in which he finished 8th in the league in passer rating while throwing 26 touchdowns, 8 picks. He was tied for the NFL lead with fourth quarter drive comebacks, 4, and tied for second in game-winning drives, 4, according to Pro Football Focus. Reference. While the legs aren't what they used to be, he still ran for 381 and 3 touchdowns. My God, I can't read today. So, anyway, the problem is if you're the Steelers or even the Raiders, you're going to have to probably compete to sign Russell Wilson because the Vikings are probably, they may or may not keep Kirk Cousins, and the Buccaneers may or may not keep Baker Mayfield, and the Falcons may not want to roll with a Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke situation. So Russell's going to get some play in some different spots for a starting role. So what would you do? Tell him, Kenny Pickett's the guy, but if he falters, we're going to you. I think he's going to get more consideration as a straight-up starter for somebody going into the season. Now, if he gets stripped of his job again by some NFL team, if he stays in the league the following year, yeah, you may be battling with somebody to keep your job. The Raiders, I mean, they would bring Russell straight in as a starter, and that's going to be the problem. There might be, and all these places, in theory, could draft a quarterback too, and Russell would be ahead of them. But if he's drafted, if he's drafted too high, Russell may not want to go there because then you've got the fan base wanting to see a big-time quarterback come in that they drafted, right? And I'm talking guys that can drop in the draft but still be high enough that your fan base is going to clamor. A Bo Nix, a Michael Penix Jr., J.J. McCarthy. You get the point. Tell me what you think. Where is Russell going? 2 of the most prominent teams we cover on this channel, the Raiders and the Steelers, may be competing for the same dude. I think Steelers fans would be like, anybody else? Anybody else? If the Browns could get Russell cheap, would they take a look? Just as a backup plan to what I think is going to be a nightmare for them next year. Peace. I'm out. Till next time.
Thanks for watching the show. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to tune in next time on Black and White Sports.